The Bankruptcy of the United States. United States Congressional Record May 4, 1992. United States Congressional Record January 19, 1976. United States Congressional Record March 17, 1993 Volume Number 33. Page H1303 Speaker Senator James Traficant Jr., Ohio, addressing the House. Mr. Speaker, we are here now in Chapter 11. Members of Congress are official trustees presiding over the greatest reorganization of any bankrupt entity in world history, the U.S. government. We are. Offices, officials, and departments are now operating within a de facto status in name, adjacent to Independence Hall in Philadelphia. Treasury receives no compensation for representing the United States. Setting forth hopefully, a blueprint for our future. There are some who say it is a coroner's report that will lead to our demise. The life of debt that we have all piled up, private debt, credit cards and whatnot, or whether it is the government. We are insolvent. How long will it take before the nasty? It is an established fact that the United States federal government has been dissolved by the Emergency Banking Act, March 9, 1933, 48 Stat. 1. Public Law 89-719, declared by President Roosevelt, being bankrupt and insolvent. H.J.R. 192, 73rd Congress M. Session June 5, 1933 Joint Resolution to suspend the gold standard and abrogate the gold clause dissolved the sovereign authority of the United States and the official capacities of all United States governmental offices, officers, and departments, and is further evidence that the United States federal government exists today in name only. Democracy, being an established socialist communist order under a new governor for. The receivers of the United States bankruptcy are the international bankers, via the of the Secretary of Treasury to that of the Governor of the International Monetary Fund. Mega truth is conveyed, United Nations, the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund. All United States. Only under emergency war powers. With the constitutional republican form of government now dissolved, the receivers of the bankruptcy have adopted a new form of America. This act was instituted and established by transferring and/or placing the office, government for the United States. This new form of government is known as a Council of Philadelphia, inviting members of Congress to participate in a ceremonial. Page 240 Marjorie S. Holt. Public Law 94-564, page 8, section H.R. 13955 reads in part, the U.S. Secretary of. Page H. 2891, Senator and Chairman of the House of Representatives Committee on Banking, Finance and Urban Affairs, Senator Henry Gonzalez, Texas, speaking on national and international thievery in high places. We are bankrupted. We are insolvent on every level of our national life, whether it is corporate, whether it is just plain you and I out there with Maryland. Mr. Speaker, many of us recently received a letter from the World Affairs signing of a Declaration of Interdependence on January 30 in Congress Hall. To decisions by such an assembly, unless we long for national suicide. Instead, let us have. A number of members of Congress have been invited to sign this document, lending their prestige to its theme, but I want the record to show my strong opposition to this. Freedom and self-government are not outdated. The fathers of our republic fought that the economy of all nations is a seamless web, and that no one nation can any longer. Declaration. It calls for the surrender of our national sovereignty to international organizations. It declares that our economy should be regulated by international independence and freedom. Tolerate such an idea. America should never subject her fate independence and freedom. If we surrender our independence to a new world, effectively maintain its processes of production and monetary systems without authorities. It proposes that we enter a new world order that would redistribute the wealth created by the American people. Gold and silver were such a powerful money during the founding of the United States of Revolution for those ideals, which are as valid today as they ever were. Let us not betray. Years ago in Philadelphia, We fought a great revolution for independence and individual liberty, but now it is proposed that we participate in a world socialist order. Are we a? Mr. Speaker, this is an obscenity that defiles our Declaration of Independence, signed 200, employed in the United States of the value of 100 cents, or of any combination. Proud and free people, or are we a carcass to be picked by the jackals of the world, who substitute? People traded their coupons as money, or currency. Currency is not money. Government. Let us celebrate Jefferson and Madison, not Marx and Lenin. Want to destroy us. When one cuts through the high-flown rhetoric of this Declaration of Interdependence, one finds key phrases that tell the story. For example, it states, gold or silver money. Federal Reserve notes (FRNs) make no such promises, and are not those now minted. It is the 100th part of a dollar. Recognizing the necessity for collaborative regulation by international authorities. How do you like the idea of international authorities controlling our production and our monetary system, Mr. Speaker? How could any American dedicated to our national America, that the Founding Fathers declared that only gold or silver coins can be money, order, we will be betraying our historic ideals of freedom and self-government. Transactions. They were stored in banks and a claim check was issued as a money. Freedom by embracing slave masters, let us not betray self-government with world. A dollar is a measure of weight defined by the Coinage Act of 1792 and 1900, which is still in force today. A dollar specifies a certain quantity, 24.8 grains of gold, or 371.25 grains of silver. In Black's Law Dictionary, 6th edition, dollar, the money unit of coins totaling 100 cents. Cent, a coin of the United States, the least in value of. In America, since gold and silver coinage were heavy and inconvenient for a lot of but a money substitute, redeemable currency must promise to pay a dollar equivalent in money. A Federal Reserve note is a debt obligation of the federal United States government, not money. The federal United States government and the U.S. Congress were not and have never been authorized by the Constitution for the United States of America to issue currency of any kind, but only lawful money, gold and silver coin. It is essential that we comprehend the distinction between real money and paper money system. You cannot service a debt with a currency that has no backing in value or substitute. One cannot get rich by accumulating money substitutes, one can only get federal United States government. The Federal Reserve is a maritime lender, and/or their lust is for power and control. Since the inception of central banking, they have deeper into debt. We the people no longer have any money. Most Americans have not. The Federal Reserve System is based on the canon law and the principles of sovereignty. Been paid any money for a very long time, perhaps not in their entire life. Now do you comprehend why you feel broke? Now, do you understand why you are bankrupt, the printing costs of what they need? FRNs are nothing more than promissory notes for along with the rest of the country. Federal Reserve notes FRNs are unsigned checks written on a closed account. FRNs are an inflatable paper system designed to create debt through inflation, devaluation of currency. Whenever there is an increase of the supply of a money substitute in the economy without a corresponding increase in the gold and silver backing, inflation occurs. Inflation is an invisible form of taxation that irresponsible governments inflict on controlled the fates of nations. The Federal Reserve System is a sovereign power structure separate and distinct from their citizens. The Federal Reserve Bank, who controls the supply and movement of FRNs, has everybody fooled. They have access to an unlimited supply of FRNs, paying only for U.S. Treasury securities T-bills, a promise to pay the debt to the Federal Reserve Bank, possession of it as security by the lender or underwriter. The Federal Reserve Act. There is a fundamental difference between paying and discharging a debt. To pay a debt you must pay with value or substance, i.e. gold, silver, barter or a commodity. With FRNs, you can only discharge a debt. You cannot pay a debt with a debt currency. 1870. Although post facto laws are strictly forbidden by the Constitution. 1. 9. 3. Substance. No contract in common law is valid unless it involves an exchange of good and valuable consideration. Unpayable debt transfers power and control to the sovereign power structure that has no interest in money, law, equity or justice because they have so. Admiralty, maritime law. The lender or underwriter bears the risks, and the maritime law. Much wealth already protected in the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. In fact, the international bankers used of the debtor can also be hypothecated to pledge something as a security without taking a canon law trust as their model, adding stock and naming it a joint stock trust. The U.S. Congress had passed a law making it illegal for any legal person to duplicate a joint stock trust in 1873. The Federal Reserve Act was legislated post facto to maritime insurance underwriter to the federal United States operating exclusively under compelling specific performance in paying the interest or premiums are the same. Assets. Tyranny to enforce paying it. America has become completely bankrupt in world leadership, financial credit and its stipulated that the interest on the debt was to be paid in gold. There was no stipulation in the Federal Reserve Act for ever paying the principal. Prior to 1913, most Americans owned clear, allodial title to property, free and clear of. This has been going on for over 80 years without the informed knowledge of the few of our elected representatives in Washington, D.C. have dared to tell the truth. The any liens are mortgages until the Federal Reserve Act, 1913, hypothecated all property within the federal United States to the Board of Governors of the Federal Reserve, in which the trustees, stockholders, held legal title. The U.S. citizen, tenant, franchisee was registered as a beneficiary of the trust via his/her birth certificate. In 1933, the bankruptcy and economic slavery of the most corrupt order. Wake up America, take. All land is held by a sovereign and the common people had no rights to hold allodial title. We are reaping what has been sown, and the results of our harvest is a painful. America is fundamentally bankrupt. Why don't more people own their properties? Parks, forests, birth certificates, and nonprofit organizations, as collateral against the federal United States hypothecated all of the present and future properties, assets and labor of their subjects, the 14th Amendment U.S. citizen, to the Federal Reserve System. In return, the Federal Reserve System agreed to extend the Federal United States Corporation all the credit, money substitute, it needed. Like any other debtor, the Federal United States government had to assign collateral and security to their creditors as a condition of the loan. Since the federal United States didn't have any assets, they assigned the private property of their economic slaves, the U.S. citizens, as collateral against the property from a sovereign in the guise of the Federal Reserve Bank. We the people have unpayable federal debt. They also pledged the unincorporated federal territories, national federal debt. All has already been transferred as payment to the international bankers. Unwittingly, America has returned to its pre-American Revolution, feudal roots whereby to property. Once again, we the people are the tenants and sharecroppers renting our own, exchanged one master for another. American people, without a voice protesting loud enough. Now it's easy to grasp why, outright, why are 90% of Americans mortgaged to the hilt and have little or no assets after all debts and liabilities have been paid. Why does it feel like you are working harder and getting less and less? Bankruptcy, and a foreclosure on American property, precious liberties, and a way of life. Federal United States is bankrupt. Our children will inherit this unpayable debt, and the reputation for courage, vision and human rights. This is an undeclared economic war. Back your country. The Federal Reserve An Astounding Exposure 1934. All of the above was published in the Congressional Record March 17, 1993, volume number 33, page H1303 by Senator James Traficant, Jr. Google for more information.